I married a vegetable man as a wife, who is an only child. The wealthy mother-in-law said, as long as you can arouse his desires and have a child, you will get $1 million. I decided to get $3 million at all costs. When Mary took me to her villa, she laid out the terms. Her son Daniel became a vegetable man due to a car accident. Mary held my hand and said, Sophia, the doctor has checked, Daniel is still functioning in that aspect. As long as you can have a child with Daniel, you will get $1 million on the spot. After speaking, Mary took me to Daniel's bedroom. Daniel's bedroom was clearly carefully selected, facing the sun. Sunlight streamed in from the window, reflecting on Daniel's well-defined face, and I was instantly fascinated. This vegetable man was too handsome. If it weren't for the fact that he can't move now, I probably wouldn't have a chance with him in my next life. Mary continued, You've seen Daniel's situation, Sophia. You need to take the initiative in this. Vegetables also have desires. It's up to you how to arouse his desires if you lack experience. Andy recommends 2 movies for you. Blushing, I waved my hands repeatedly. No need, Auntie, I will take care of Daniel. After the instructions, Mary went back to the company, leaving me alone in this huge villa. After Mary left, I approached the bed and looked at the sleeping Daniel. His deep double eyelids, high nose bridge, thin cold lips, based on his appearance, that aspect should be fine. I picked up Daniel's hand and toyed with it. As Mary said, there was no response. After a while, feeling bored, I began to wander around the large villa until dinner time. After dinner, the maid brought a silk quilt, changed the bed for Daniel, and signaled me to sleep with Daniel tonight. So soon. The temptation of $3 million was right in front of me. Although I was eager, I told myself I didn't have to be in such a hurry. Sophia, is there a problem? Madam said from now on you will live with the young master until you become pregnant and have a child. Seeing my hesitance, the maid said, No. I waved my hand quickly and sent the maid away. After the maid left, I looked at Daniel on the bed, feeling conflicted. I may want the $3 million, but I have been a virgin for 24 years. Lying next to a strange man suddenly, I couldn't entirely let go. Thinking about the contract I signed with Mary, the sooner I get pregnant and have a child, the sooner I can take the money and leave. I encouraged myself, took off my clothes, opened the closet to change into my pajamas. When I opened the closet, I was stunned. Inside were all types of sexy clothes lined up. Didn't Mary know that even if I didn't wear anything at the moment, her son wouldn't be able to see anything anyway? I put on a relatively conservative nightgown and slowly walked to the bed. Seeing the unresponsive Daniel on the bed, I still hesitated. Eventually, I braced myself. What would I be afraid of with a vegetable man who couldn't do anything? I swiftly lifted the covers, and slipped in. Unbeknownst to me, the moment I got under the covers, Daniel's eyelids quivered. As I lay on the bed, I began to have second thoughts. At 24, I knew that having a child didn't happen with just one night in bed. There must be deeper communication between a man and a woman. But how could I communicate with a vegetable man? Mary said Daniel was not affected, and at the thought of this, I couldn't help but peek down. The blanket blocked everything, nothing could be seen. I tentatively reached out and touched Daniel's face. Surprisingly, it was quite smooth, even better than my own skin. Feeling a little daring, I traced Daniel's eyebrows, up to his prominent nose bridge, then to his rough throat, and down to his sturdy chest, all the way down. The touch was quite nice, his strong waist, taut and hard abdominal muscles. I could imagine how strong Daniel must have been before becoming a vegetable. As I touched him, I felt my whole body heating up, itchy, unable to find relief. Stop, Sophia, if you go further down, you won't be able to control yourself. I forced myself to withdraw my hand, cleared my mind, and tried to sleep. Halfway through the night, I had a dream where a pair of large hands were caressing me from head to toe. I twisted in my dream, feeling as if a fire was being ignited and extinguished all over my body, with no relief in sight. The night was filled with tossing and turning. Awakening the next morning, my body felt sore and weak, like I had been run over by a train. Thinking back to the dream from the night before, my face turned red. At that moment, I felt extremely grateful that Daniel was a vegetable man and couldn't see that scene. Otherwise, how could I face him in the future? After taking care of Daniel, Mary called me. Sophia, how was last night? Did anything happen with Daniel? This was too direct. Despite knowing Daniel couldn't hear, I covered the phone, walked to the window, and secretly answered. It's okay, just that things didn't progress as quickly as expected. I will need some more time. Mary, understanding the situation, said, I see. Maybe there's still some hesitation between young people. Don't worry, I'll arrange for you guys tonight. After speaking, Mary hung up. Wait, what arrangement? Mary, you need to finish your sentences. Because of Mary's words, I anxiously and uneasily waited the whole day. Finally, in the evening, I got the arrangement Mary mentioned. The nanny came in carrying a projector, closed all the curtains in our bedroom, turned on the projector, and even arranged the mood lights. The video on the screen was something I couldn't describe. Mrs. Sophia said you should study it well, practice it live, and hand in a practical report tomorrow morning. After saying that, the nanny left and even considerately locked the door. Study, live practice? And a practical report to hand in? Mary really took things too far. I almost regretted taking on this task. I turned to look at Daniel. In the dim mood lighting, with his eyes closed, his sharp features softened, and his handsome features had a kind of deadly allure at that moment. I blushed and my heart raced after just one glance at the video. I wanted to turn it off, but then I realized that the nanny had taken the remote with her when she left. I had to climb back into bed next to Daniel, enduring the stimulating sound from the video. At this moment, Daniel was still lying quietly on the bed, seemingly unaffected by the intense and ambiguous scene. Thinking about Mary's instruction for the live practice, I steeled myself. Sooner or later, I would have to get through this, have a child early, get the money, and leave. With that in mind, I summoned the courage to lie down beside Daniel. Feeling like my position was wrong, I climbed back up. I clumsily imitated the actions in the video, awkwardly kissing Daniel's eyes, moving to his nose, his lips, until I kissed his Adam's apple. At that moment, Daniel seemed to tremble slightly, but when I looked again, he was still lying there with his eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Maybe it was just my imagination. But when it came to the last step that Mary mentioned, I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. I didn't dare to look down to see if there was any response from Daniel, the man in a vegetative state. Could it work or not? Just as I was in a dilemma, suddenly, all the lights in the villa went out, and the projector stopped. It turned out there was a power outage. I quickly stopped my actions, climbing down from Daniel. Without the stimulation of the projector, I gradually calmed down and snuggled into Daniel's arms. It didn't feel enough, so I took Daniel's hand and wrapped it around my waist. The sparse moonlight shining in, casting a shadow on Daniel's face, accentuating the silhouette of his long lashes. Do you think I'm cheap, selling myself to have a child for $1 million? I laughed at myself, and for some reason, on this moonlit night, with a man in a vegetative state in front of me, I suddenly felt like I wanted to vent all my grievances. From a young age, my family's financial situation was not good, and my parents favored my brother. Even the money for my high school education was borrowed from my parents with IOUs. No one would believe that in 2023, there would still be girls living in such miserable conditions, but that's me. Through my own efforts, I got into a good university, but my parents refused to support me anymore, so I had to apply for student loans. I had to work and study at the same time, finally completing my university education. While other girls were setting sail on a new chapter in their lives after graduation, I was already burdened with debts, owed to my parents and from student loans. After graduation, it was not easy for a girl like me with no family background to find a job. After working hard for 2 years and finally making some progress, my grandmother fell ill, and her treatment required hundreds of thousands of dollars. My parents were unwilling to help with my grandmother's medical expenses, leaving her to fend for herself. But my grandmother was the only person who had shown me warmth since I was young, and I couldn't abandon her. So, I paid all the money I had to the hospital and took care of my grandmother day and night until the hospital demanded more payment, and I had nothing left to give. That's when I met Mary, who could solve my life problems as long as I gave birth to a child and got the money. I could afford my grandmother's treatment, and she could continue to be with me. Therefore, I needed that $1 million, and I needed it quickly, or my grandmother's condition couldn't afford any delays. Tears rolled down my cheeks, hot and scalding, dripping onto Daniel's arm. In a place I couldn't see under the covers, Daniel's fingers moved inadvertently. The next morning, I woke up still in Daniel's arms. Afraid that I might have numbed his arm, I quickly got up and massaged his arm. At that moment, Mary called. "Sophia, did it happen last night?" My face turned red with embarrassment. I still need some more time." Mary sounded impatient. "Is it you or Daniel who can't do it?" I knew if I could do it, but I had never tried. If Daniel could, how would I know? Mary was stern. "Still haven't learned it? Need someone to teach you? Send me an 800-word practical report." After that, she hung up. She really was a tough boss, getting things done promptly. I turned to Daniel, a pained expression on my face. Why is she like this? An 800-word report for this? Is it really a practical report? Blushing throughout, I racked my brains to write a short essay about the events between Daniel and I from the previous night, and send it to Mary. After all, when you take someone's money, you have to follow the rules. 3 minutes later, Mary replied with those short words: "Making progress, details need improvement." A true boss, efficient and effective. Since that night when I opened up to Daniel about my past, I felt closer to him from the bottom of my heart. Maybe because he was in a vegetative state, I felt secure every night as I lay beside him. I found myself chatting with him about many things, mine, others, and even a cloud I saw in the sky during the day. Unintentionally, I became increasingly dependent on Daniel, and when he wasn't around, I found myself missing him. Slapping my face, I told myself, "Sophia, snap out of it, he's just a vegetable." But I couldn't control the growing closeness I felt to Daniel in my heart. Therefore, I asked the nanny if I could take over the task of washing Daniel's body every night. After all, I was already his wife. Most importantly, Mary had given me so much. My grandmother had also been arranged to stay in the hospital by Mary, and I felt like I had to repay her. But ideals were one thing, reality was another. I had never imagined facing such a situation of washing Daniel's body before this. I had cleaned Daniel's hands, face, and upper body, even applied lotion. But when faced with Daniel's lower body, I hesitated. I looked down at Daniel's tight abs and saw water droplets trickling down his body. I couldn't help but swallow nervously. "Daniel, I'm your wife, everything I'm doing now is within a wife's rights, please don't blame me." I tried to reassure myself before quickly taking off Daniel's pants. Being single for 24 years, seeing this for the first time made my heart race. I took a deep breath and glanced up at Daniel. Was it the high room temperature or something else that made me see a slight blush on Daniel's face? As I stared at Daniel intently, I suddenly remembered the agreement I made with Mary. While Daniel was occupied, would I soon get that $1 million? Without realizing it, as I focused on Daniel, I missed the fact that his eyelids twitched a couple of times, showing signs of opening. Ignoring the fact that he was in a vegetative state, I slowly reached out my hand, my breathing quickening, and moved it towards Daniel. I took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I quickly cleaned him down there, then swiftly covered him up with the blanket, only leaving his head exposed. After getting used to bathing Daniel, I felt more relaxed facing him. That day, after the bath, blow-drying my hair halfway, I wrapped myself in a towel and headed back to the bedroom. While bending down to straighten out the blanket for Daniel, the towel accidentally slipped off, leaving me completely naked. My initial reaction was to cover my chest and pick up the towel, but then I remembered, Daniel was a vegetative patient, he couldn't see anything. So, I tossed the towel aside, planning to throw it in the washing machine later. I don't know why, but I felt like Daniel's muscles were unusually tense that night, and he felt incredibly hot, exuding a sense of imminent attack. Shaking my head, thinking Daniel being in a vegetative state, there's no way he could have a reaction. But when my gaze shifted down, I still gasped in surprise. The scene before me made me blush and wander into improper thoughts, my body suddenly feeling heated. Maybe it was the change in weather, the rise in temperature. Could even a vegetative patient feel hot? At that moment, I received a call from the hospital. Sophia, your grandmother's condition isn't good, she needs surgery as soon as possible, you better raise the surgery fee quickly. I panicked, quickly called Mary. I cried and begged Mary if she could transfer the money to me first so I could get the surgery fee from my grandmother, promising that I would have a child with Daniel as soon as possible. Mary sighed on the other end. Sophia, don't worry, I'm at the hospital right now. You rest assured, I'll cover your grandmother's surgery fee, deduct it from the 1 million when you get pregnant. I'm sending a driver over to take you to the hospital. I didn't expect my task was not over yet. Mary not only arranged for my grandmother to stay in the hospital but also covered the surgery fee for us. I couldn't express my gratitude enough and could only follow the driver to the hospital to see my grandmother in the hospital. Seeing my grandmother on the hospital bed, I burst into tears. Mary held me back, telling me that my grandmother was about to go into the operating room, she would be fine, and she would arrange everything, asking me not to worry. I stayed at the hospital for a week. Thankfully, my grandmother's surgery was successful, and she recovered very well after the operation. She just needed to stay for another half-month before she could come home. Mary also promised that during my stay in the villa, she wouldn't send my grandmother back to my parents' place but put her in a house under her name, where she would be taken care of attentively by a professional. Mary's actions, to me, were no different from having parents again. I cried, asking Mary how I could repay her. Mary patted my head. Sophia, you were my carefully chosen daughter-in-law back then. If Daniel wakes up, you'll be my true daughter-in-law. With Daniel's current situation, I won't hold you back. As long as you have a child with Daniel soon, give us a grandson, you can take the money and leave immediately, and start over with someone else. I hugged Mary. I don't want to leave, I don't want to find another man. As long as you and Daniel don't mind me, even if he's in a vegetative state, I want to be with Daniel for a lifetime. Mary smiled contentedly. My judgment was correct. You're young, it's too early for you to say these things. Decide whether to go or stay once you have the child. Half a month later, my grandmother was discharged from the hospital. Mary arranged everything for my grandmother as she promised. Feeling relieved, I returned to the big villa. Not having been back for more than 20 days, I missed Daniel, feeling empty inside every day. When I got home, for some reason, I immediately noticed that Daniel had lost weight. Did he lose weight because I wasn't there, missing me? I shook my head, mocking my own unrealistic thoughts. Daniel was a vegetative patient, with no senses, perhaps he didn't even know he had a wife. But I couldn't control myself, rushing into Daniel's arms. Even though he had no awareness, I poured out my worries, fears, joys, and happiness from these past 20 days to Daniel bit by bit. Only in Daniel's embrace, smelling that familiar scent, did I feel at peace. I held on to Daniel, cuddling with him in his arms. Daniel, I miss you so much, I have so much to tell you. Do you know, I like you. I don't know why, but I've somehow come to like a vegetative patient, and I've unconsciously fallen for you, even though you don't even know I exist. I started out being with you for money, but now, even without money, I'm willing to have a child with you. Am I sick? How could I develop feelings for a vegetative patient? Daniel, wake up, please. I want you to wake up, I want you to kiss and hug me. I kept whispering into Daniel's ear until I fell asleep deeply. In the middle of the night, I dreamt again. I dreamed that a pair of hands hugged me tightly, with hot tears falling on my face. When I woke up in the morning, everything was back to normal. I stared at Daniel, feeling like last night was not a dream, nor my imagination. But no matter how I stared, Daniel still looked like a vegetable. I chuckled disappointedly, maybe I was going crazy, just wanting Daniel to wake up so much that I had daydreams and night dreams. Just when I couldn't get past the final obstacle with Daniel night after night, Mary got sick. I went to the hospital to see Mary, and as she lay there in a big hospital gown, I noticed something. Mary, who always had a strong presence, looked older, with white hair. It made my heart ache a little. Mary gestured for me to sit next to her and said, "Sophia, I'm getting old, my health is failing. I've been holding on strong since Daniel became a vegetable a year ago. If I can't hold on anymore, will you come to the company and help me? I buried my head in Mary's lap, feeling the motherly love I never had. No, Mary, you can't give up. Daniel hasn't woken up yet. You will get better. Mary stroked my head and said, I know my body. The only regret is not being able to wake Daniel up. I won't even have face to face his father in the afterlife. Sophia, have a child with Daniel for me. I'm begging you, I'll give you anything you want. Tears fell on my face, burning in my heart. Choking back tears, I said, Mary, Daniel will have a child. You cannot give up. You're still waiting to hold your grandchild. In that moment, I made a decision when I returned to the villa that day. I cleaned up myself and Daniel, drew the curtains, and lay down side by side on the bed. Daniel, Auntie is struggling with her health. She just wants to see your family have a child. You won't mind, right? I explained to him, even though I knew Daniel couldn't hear me. Maybe it was the pink ambience light, as Daniel's ears turned red, and a blush spread across his face. I removed the last barriers between us and laid everything bare. This was the first time I really looked at Daniel's body. The broad chest that exuded a sense of security, the toned muscles and abs, and then the sudden arousal. I covered him, kissing from the corner of his eyes, to his nose, lips, earlobes, and neck. What's going on? Daniel's face seemed even redder now. What's more, his body felt like it was on fire, nearly scalding me. I touched him all over, watching him unable to move, and surprisingly, feeling a bit more excited what was happening. Moving downward slowly, I took a deep breath and lowered my head. There seemed to be a rapid intake of breath by his ear, and as I looked up, Daniel remained still with closed eyes. I continued, watching as it grew more engorged, veins pulsing. The heat was intense, almost too hot to handle. Then I straddled him. A sensation shot through me, starting from a sharp pain, turning into soft tingles, until we completely merged together, connecting deeply in our souls. Intense and tumultuous, it felt as if my soul was floating in heaven, then riding a roller coaster in the clouds, ups and downs, with hot sweat flowing, my mind going blank. My soul felt jolted repeatedly, as if I was about to pass out. Finally, I heard a muffled groan, followed by a rush of heat. Feeling weak and limp all over, I collapsed, looking at Daniel, still expressionless. Was the groan I heard just now my imagination? Afterward, I changed the sheets, soaked the crimson stain in water to wash in the morning, and then cuddled up with Daniel in his arms. I let out a satisfied breath. Daniel, I knew this would happen on the first day I came. If I knew it would feel this good with you, I should have done it on the first day, I murmured. Suddenly, something pressed against me. Startled, was this instant karma? Are all vegetables this intense? After that, shamelessly, I started a physical relationship with Daniel, making Mary visibly delighted when she next visited me. Sophia, you guys, did it? Mary asked bashfully. I nodded shyly. Mary hesitated, is Daniel capable in that department? I blushed deeply. Looking at my flushed face, my weak legs, knowing I could hardly get out of bed, seeing my reaction, Mary instantly brightened up. Good, I was worried about the effects of Daniel being bedridden for so long. So, speed things up, Mary said excitedly, her usual authoritative demeanor disappearing. Watching Mary look a few years younger in an instant, I wondered if her previous illness was a ruse to push me to get things done quickly. Oh, it's Valentine's Day today, your young people's holiday. I've given the security and maids a day off, so the whole villa is yours and Daniel's tonight. Have fun. Mary said before hastily running off, leaving behind a big bag. I opened the bag and my eyes widened in surprise. Costumes, candles, a whip, handcuffs, everything was there. Thinking about Mary's parting words, I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I carried the bag to the bedroom upstairs, taking out the props one by one to show Daniel. Even though I knew Daniel was unaware, I asked, Daniel, do you like me in this outfit or the other one? Or would you prefer being restrained? Feeling mischievous, I held up the handcuffs in front of Daniel, pretending to restrain him. For some reason, it seemed like Daniel raised an eyebrow, unable to contain my laughter. I playfully flicked the small whip. Daniel, I'm really looking forward to tonight. Finally, as night fell, the entire villa was left with just me and Daniel. I had carefully prepared everything, even changing into the costume, ready to engage with Daniel when suddenly, someone grabbed me from behind, rendering me unable to move a muscle. I screamed and turned my head, only to see Edward. Edward had been pursuing me since college, even after graduation. But I always felt he wasn't sincere, so I never accepted his advances. I couldn't believe that he found out where I was, and tonight, taking advantage of the empty mansion in the outskirts, he sneaked in through the window on the second floor by climbing a tree from outside. Sophia, nobody's around in the mansion tonight, and we're in the suburbs. Even if you scream your lungs out, no one's coming to save you, Edward said, looking at me with a sinister gaze. Edward, you beast. This is illegal. Mary won't let you get away with this. I shouted. Edward was strong, holding me with one hand while grabbing handcuffs with the other, chaining my hands to the table. I chased you for 5 years, and you never said yes. But now, you sold yourself for money to a vegetable man. Sophia, how could you be so despicable? Since you like to play games, I'll play with you. Edward said as he pinned me down on the table, gagging me with a piece of cloth. Imagine when I play with you in front of your vegetable husband, wouldn't that be more thrilling? He whispered in my ear. That creep. I couldn't move, tears streaming down my face as I looked towards Daniel. I knew I couldn't escape, just hoping Edward wouldn't harm Daniel. Seeing Daniel awake, I cried and exclaimed, that Daniel, you thought he'd never wake up, and I thought I was done for. Mary comforted me and held my hand. Things turned chaotic as a vase smashed on Edward's head, knocking him unconscious. Behind Edward stood a fully awake Daniel, who doctors said would never wake up again. Daniel held me as I wept, apologizing for not protecting me. After freeing me from the handcuffs, Daniel tied up Edward and called the police. Mary and the police arrived, seeing Daniel awake, embracing him and crying with joy. Despite the chaos, thanks to Daniel's awakening, it felt like a happy new year for me and Mary. Medical miracles may not exist, but love can create miracles. I felt embarrassed by Mary's words of gratitude, and quietly pulled on Daniel's shirt, asking him how he would thank me. Daniel replied, haven't I already thanked you? I didn't surrender myself to you outright, making it easy for you, right? My face blushed. After Mary left, I cornered Daniel against the wall, asking if he was conscious during his coma. Daniel chuckled, admitting he was always aware but couldn't move. He described his experiences of being trapped in his own mind, occasionally emerging but unable to control when. Every night, I poured my heart out to Daniel, not realizing he could hear every word. Daniel confessed that initially he saw me as a tool for bearing a child, but as time passed, he fell in love with me and couldn't bear to be apart. He heard my pleas and longings, unable to respond except for a tear when he occasionally woke up at night. Learning about Daniel's struggles made my heart ache. He was conscious but unable to move, suffering so much during that time. As Daniel revealed that he could sense my presence throughout, my guilt soared for my uninhibited behaviors and words in front of him when I thought he was unaware. Realizing my attempts to escape, Daniel grabbed me, saying, "Who said that if I woke up, I wouldn't have my way with you?" I begged for mercy, but it seemed too late as our roles reversed for the night. I was tossed and turned, my throat almost hoarse, my whole soul pierced. It felt like I was being jostled in the clouds, repeatedly surging to the peak, every limb and bone being thoroughly ravaged. After it was all over, the two of us lay exhausted side by side on the bed. Daniel asked if I was satisfied with him. I nodded, just as big as the first time I saw the video. Daniel tapped my head, no more watching those messy things in the future. In my heart, I thought, those are made by your own mom. In the following days, Daniel and I went to see his grandmother together. Grandma's health had recovered very well, she was very satisfied with Daniel, and the more she saw him, the more she liked him, even pushing me, her granddaughter, to the side. I pretended to be jealous. "Grandma, you can't be so biased, I am your granddaughter." Mary hugged me from the side. "It's okay, Sophia, Grandma is biased towards that brat, I am biased towards you. Coming out of the hospital, Daniel held my hand. Sophia, our agreement before was 1 child for $1 million. If you get $1 million in the future, will you still leave? I proudly straightened my chest. No way. I once vowed not to give up without $3 million. Daniel laughed. Am I not worth that $3 million when I am all yours? I glanced at Daniel. This physique, this looks, this expertise, I really got a good deal. My gaze gradually lowered, sensing the desire in my eyes. Daniel's eyes darkened. He pulled me into the car and quickly drove home. Daniel, slow down. What are you doing? Are you sure you want to slow down? I'm afraid someone can't wait. When we got home, he turned off the engine, went upstairs, everything moving seamlessly. Daniel threw me onto the bed, covering me with a heavy blanket. But you haven't proposed to me yet. My mouth was suddenly sealed, sucked on, as if Daniel wanted to completely absorb me into his body. Nowhere to escape. Daniel, we haven't. Say honey. Honey, I said shyly. Daniel's body stiffened, his eyes instantly turning red hot, a thick desire ready to engulf me. I just felt like I was in the clouds, on the sea, sinking, indulging. Fireworks blossomed in the sky. In Daniel's eyes, I saw stars falling to earth.